All right, good morning, everyone. It is 8:06 a.m. on December 13th, 2024. I'm going to go ahead and call the full board meeting to order, and we can go ahead and have roll call.
All right. Dr. Zaffron,
Present.
Dr. Farmer,
Present.
Mr. Kokonos,
Present.
Mrs. Barnes,
Present.
Dr. Bhatia,
Present.
Mr. Crane, Dr. Deloche,
Here.
Ms. Del Rosal,
Here.
Dr. DeStefano,
Present.
Mrs. Harrod,
Here.
Dr. Jones, Dr. Martinez,
Here.
Mrs. Morgan,
Here.
Dr. Nadeau,
Here.
Dr. Nyack,
Present.
Dr. Quinones,
Present.
Dr. Tibbles, Mrs. Troncoso,
Present.
Dr. Vanderwide.
Yes, sir.
All right, we do have a quorum and may proceed. And if we have any others join us, we'll be sure to note it for the record.
Great, thank you, Mr. Carlton. So we always start with our mission statement. Our mission is to protect and enhance the public's health, safety, and welfare by establishing and maintaining standards of excellence used in regulating the practice of medicine and ensuring quality healthcare for the citizens of Texas through licensure, discipline, and education. The first item on the agenda is our board member report. The first thing I would like to highlight is that we will be meeting in person in March. I believe that is already set. I understand that there was a lot of questions from the public as to why we have not been meeting in person for a long period of time, especially post-COVID. I want to emphasize that COVID has nothing to do with it. We are in a new building, and the boardroom is still being put together from an IT perspective. So there have been technical issues in making sure that the rooms are ready for all of us to be present, as well as for forum for the public to actually be present and be able to have that interaction. My understanding is that is probably going to be in place by March, and that'll allow us to all be present and here in Austin in person, which will be really nice to make sure that we're able to meet face to face and have that personal interaction that is so important for the board. So look forward to more of that as that is being arranged. Traditionally speaking, at the end of the year, I typically give a summary of what we have done in the past year. A lot has happened, a lot of it positive. We've been doing quite a bit in moving our rules and regulations forward. So I'd like to take this opportunity to revisit some of the major endeavors the board has tackled this year. But before I do so, since our last board meeting, I did put out a statement regarding the physician's responsibilities when caring for a pregnant woman, especially considering the rules that this board adopted in June. And I would like to reiterate and highlight that because this is extremely important, especially as it relates to the welfare of our women here in Texas. As I'm sure you're all aware, there have been numerous reports of pregnant women facing dire situations, not receiving the care they need, despite board rules and statutes clearly permitting it. In that statement, I strongly urged physicians to thoroughly review applicable rules and statutes so that they fully understand the board's expectations in these medical scenarios. Let me be clear. When responding to an active, imminent, or potential medical emergency, again, I reiterate, imminent, active, or potential medical emergency that places a woman in danger of death or is needed to prevent a serious risk of substantial impairment of a major bodily function, the board absolutely expects physicians to do what is medically necessary, which sometimes includes induced termination of pregnancy. There should never be an excuse or a thought that a physician has limitations on what they should do in order to make sure that they are saving a woman's life in those situations. And the board will be diligent in making sure that those rules and the standard of care is applied in all those scenarios. On a separate but related note concerning rules, staff has finally reached the end of what has been a multi-year effort to review and revise all of the agency's rules. State agencies are required to periodically conduct a comprehensive review of all their rules in the Texas Administrative Code. This exercise is meant to ensure that agency rules are clear, comprehensive, and comport with state statute, and properly serve their intended purpose and constituencies. These revised rules, which we will discuss in greater detail later in the meeting today, attempt to address some of the most common complaints the agency receives about the current rules. Those being that the rules are poorly organized, the volume makes it difficult to find specific provisions, and the language is not clear. These criticisms were kept front of mind during the review process, and the result is a reduction in the number of chapters from 40 to 25. This was largely achieved by reorganizing and combining some existing rules, as well as by removing unnecessary, superfluous statutory language from the Texas Administrative Code. I want to say a special thank you to all the folks in our General Counsel's office who led this effort, led by our General Counsel, Scott Freshour. I will say that the board received some excellent feedback from various stakeholder groups on certain chapters of the rules, and I want to assure those groups that this rule review is not the end of the discussion. In other words, if you don't see your suggestions incorporated in these revised rules, that does not mean the agency intends to disregard them. We fully recognize that there are issues that require greater scrutiny than what this cleanup process could afford. Our goal right now is to complete this review and after session, take a deeper dive on specific issues that were raised during the comment period. This approach will allow us to go into the next legislative session in January with a cleaner, better organized administrative code. Then, during session, we will hit the pause button on rulemaking activities and wait to see what, if any, legislation is passed that requires rulemaking as well. After session, we will begin to address those issues along with other substantive matters raised during this rule review process. This will likely include additional stakeholder meetings, and staff will reach out with those invites when that time comes. Another large thank you is in order for the TMB Registrations Department. As a result of House Bill 1998 that passed in the last legislative session, the TMB began the process of fingerprinting certain physician licensees in February of this year. Today, over 44,000 individuals have been fingerprinted. Although arduous, these efforts directly support our mission to safeguard the public and ensure quality health care for the citizens of Texas. House Bill 1998 also included provisions to allow the TMB to participate in the National Practitioner Data Bank's continuous query program. This year, the agency continued its efforts to enroll new and renewing licensees in continuous query. This program keeps us better informed about enrolled practitioners, such that TMB now receives email notifications within 24 hours of a report received by the NPDP, rather than months utilizing standard reporting. It's yet another tool to help us meet our mission. Finally, speaking of meeting our mission, we're looking forward to the new legislative session that will hopefully bring about more positive change for TMB operations, whether that's through new appropriations, policy change, or both. We do know through our review of legislation that has been filed already, or proposed legislation that has been filed already, that there are several that will potentially affect the medical board. We review those on a constant process. We are there to always provide input and comment and advice when asked by the legislature. Later on in the executive director's report, Mr. Carlton will highlight some of those proposed legislative changes that we are anticipating, as well as also some of our budgetary asks that we will be asking for in the next upcoming session also. So that is my board report, and we will move on with the rest of the agenda. Consideration and possible action for dispositions below minimum guidelines. There's none in that area. Number 4, consideration and approval of mediated settlement agreed orders. There are several items highlighted there. I'm going to ask the board if there's any extractions or recusals. Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 4?
Motion to accept the mediated settlement agreed orders in item number 4. Quinones.
Second,
Thank you.
Bhakti.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatia. There's been a motion. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Item number 4 passes. Number 5, consideration and possible action for remedial plans. Under administrative rules, there are none. Under crime laws, there are none. Under impairments, there are none. And under peer review state action, there is none. Under the rest, standard of care, unprofessional conduct, and late orders, are there any items of extraction or recusals? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 5?
Vanderwide, move to accept the remedial plans as indicated, item 5.
Second,
Thank you,
Tibbles.
Dr. Vanderwhite. Who seconded?
And
Tibbles.
yeah, Dr. Tibbles, did you get
Dr.
your,
Tibbles.
he wanted us to know that his team's froze, but he is still online.
Okay.
But I think he's,
All right. So did we actually have a second?
Yes,
Yes.
Tibbles, second.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Tibbles.
And Dr. Tibbles, is your camera on?
It is on my end. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So is there any further discussion on item number 5? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Agenda item number 5 passes. Number 6, consideration and possible action for agreed orders. Under administrative rules, there are none. Under crime laws, there are none. And under impairments, there are none. Under peer review, state action, standard of care, unprofessional conduct, and late orders, are there any items of extraction or are there any recusals? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 6?
Move for approval, consideration, possible action for agreed orders. Martinez?
Second, Vanderwide.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on agenda item number 6? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Agenda item number 6 passes. Number 7, consideration and approval of modification request, termination request orders. Are there any extractions or recusals? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 7?
Motion to approve item number 7, DeStefano.
Second, Barnes.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on agenda item number 7? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Agenda item number 7 passes. Number 8, consideration and approval of modification request, termination request of non-public rehabilitation orders. There is one item there. Is there any extractions or recusals on agenda item number 8? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 8?
Motion for approval, Morgan.
Second, Nayak.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on agenda item number 8? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Agenda item number 8 passes. Number 9, consideration and approval of cease and desist orders. On those items, are there any recusals or extractions? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 9?
Quinones, motion to accept consideration and approval of this listed cease and desist orders.
Thank you.
Second, Dr. Farmer.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on agenda item number 9? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Agenda item number 9 passes. All right, it's good. It's past 8:15. So number 10, consideration approval of non-pro-tunc orders. There are none. 11, consideration approval of agreed resolution orders. There are none. Number 12, consideration approval of consent orders. There are none. And number 13, consideration approval of determination of default. There is none. That brings us to agenda item number 14. It is past 8:15 a.m., so it is appropriate for us to go ahead and entertain this agenda item right now. This is a consideration approval of proposal for decision, and I will go ahead and hand it off to our staff to go ahead and process this.
and I do believe litigation staff is online, and Mr. Lipe and his client are here if you would like to come up to the table. Ms. Burns, are you online?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and for, again, for our new board members, this is going to be discussion regarding the proposal for decision that came from the State Office of Administrative Hearings. both board staff and the licensee or the applicant will be able to present comments to the board. The board staff will go first, and they'll have 10 minutes of which they can reserve any time that they do not use. And then Dr. Chan will be second. And so we'll go ahead and begin with board staff.
Thank you. Yeah, and yes, I would like to reserve any remaining time for response. Good morning, board members. Before you this morning is a proposal for decision issued by the administrative law judge with the State Office of Administrative Hearings in an appeal of the board's decision to deny Dr. Tiffany Chan's application for licensure. On August 2nd, 2021, Dr. Chan filed an application for full unrestricted medical licensure in Texas. The board licensure committee reviewed her application, and on March 2nd, 2023, Dr. Chan appeared before the committee to discuss her application. It was then determined that she was ineligible for a license due to professionalism issues displayed during her residency program. The following day, on March 3rd, 2023, the full board unanimously adopted the licensure committee's recommendation. Dr. Chan then appealed the board's decision, resulting in a contested case at SOA. The hearing on the merits was convened March 25th and 26th, 2024. The key issues litigated involved whether Dr. Chan's disciplinary actions during residency constituted grounds for denial of licensure under the Medical Practice Act. On November 14th, 2024, the ALJ issued a proposal for decision in this matter, which you have before you. And Dr. Chan did file exceptions to the PFD. Board staff then filed a response. And after having reviewed the exceptions and all responses, the ALJ recommended that no changes should be made to the PFD, and that the existing findings and conclusions were well supported by the evidence and provided sufficient information to the board needed to evaluate Dr. Chan's eligibility for licensure. Essentially, the ALJ held that the evidence presented showed Dr. Chan received multiple disciplinary warnings during her residency at UTMB Galveston for failing to complete medical charts in a timely manner. These disciplinary actions included a professionalism warning and corrective action plan in April 2021, placement on probation in March 2022, and ultimately a non-renewal of her residency contract, resulting in her inability to finish her third year of the program. Additionally, Dr. Chan failed to disclose these disciplinary actions on her licensure application and never amended the application to reflect those items, rendering her application misleading. The ALJ also in the PFD affirmed that the failure to amend her application essentially resulted in conduct that that constituted a failure to meet the eligibility requirements for licensure. After reviewing the ALJ's findings of fact and conclusions of law, board staff find those acceptable and in alignment with the evidence and testimony presented at trial, and therefore didn't file exceptions. While Dr. Chan has argued that her medical condition contributed to the documentation delays and that no patients were actually harmed, she admitted in testimony at the hearing on the merits that delinquent medical records could greatly impact patient care and potentially cause harm. The judge found that her unprofessional conduct was likely to harm the public as required by the statute. Board staff has prepared a final order that adopts the judge's findings of fact and conclusions of law, and that proposes that Dr. Chan is ineligible for a Texas medical license. And this is consistent with the board's prior determination, both by the licensure committee and then ratification by the full board, that she was ineligible at that time back in 2021. The board may not change a finding of fact or conclusion of law or vacate or modify an order of the administrative law judge. Therefore, board staff is requesting that the board enter the final order as recommended. Thank you.
All right. Can you hear me? So just at the outset, we want to thank the board for meeting with us today and also giving us the opportunity to come in person. You know, obviously, this decision is very important to Dr. Chan, and we appreciate being able to come in person rather than appear over video conference. As Ms. Burns stated, in March 2023, the licensure committee recommended and the full board adopted a motion, an order denying Dr. Chan's license for professional issues during residency. Dr. Chan did request a hearing at SOA. We had a 1.5-day trial earlier this year. And at that trial, there were several witnesses. In addition to Dr. Chan, there was her treating rheumatologist, Dr. Kazaz, a Texas physician, now a licensed Texas physician who was a senior resident and who interacted with Dr. Chan during residency. Board staff called Ms. Unterborn, Grace Unterborn, the board's licensure manager, to testify about the procedural history and the statutes and rules applicable to licensure. The question before the board is not whether it's legally required to grant or deny Dr. Chan's application. I think all parties are in agreement that the decision is purely at the board's discretion. It can decide to grant the license. It can also decide to not grant the license. But I just do want to make that clear, even though this did go before the licensure committee and, we appeared in front of them for 5 or 10 minutes. The board's not bound by that prior decision. And we submit that, a 1.5 day SOA hearing where, someone hears from Dr. Chan at length, other witnesses, it just does allow the creation of a more thorough record before the board to, consider and decide what they want to do. Just very brief background on Dr. Chan. She graduated from medical school in 2019 from the University of Central Florida. Her dream has always been to be a pediatrician and work with kids. That's always been her goal. Because of that, in June 2019, she started the 3-year pediatrics residency program at UTMB Galveston. Dr. Chan has family in Texas. Her sister lives in Austin. And her plan was always to end up practicing in Texas after completing residency. She did successfully complete the first 2 years of residency. She was not granted credit for her 3rd year, and her contract was not renewed. She was not granted credit for her 3rd year because of the number of days she had missed due to her autoimmune disorder, which I'll get to in a second. And the contract was not renewed because of really, I think the totality of everything, the number of days she was missing, how sick she was, and then not getting in her FMLA paperwork in time at that point. Please note she was not terminated for residency. She did finish out her 3rd year contract. She just wasn't granted credit for it, and they did not renew her so she could come back and essentially redo the 3rd year. The board's rules, of course, require completion of 1 year of residency. And as I said a moment ago, Dr. Chan did complete a full 2 years. The ALJ found 2 grounds on which the board could, but is not required to, deny Dr. Chan's application. The first eligibility issue, as Ms. Burns indicated, was her professionalism warning and later placement on probation in residency due to her kind of recurrent struggle timely completing some of her charts. Dr. Chan has never disputed that she had this struggle. She's never disputed that documentation is important, that it can affect patient care. She, very clearly accepted responsibility for it at the hearing. We do want to note, just to contextualize that, the vast majority of Dr. Chan's documentation was timely completed. We are talking about a relatively small number of charts. There were a total of 4 or 5 meetings, I think, with the residency program. Each meeting some meeting there was 2 charts, another meeting there was 5 charts, 3 charts. It was fairly in the grand scheme of things, it's most of her charts were completed timely. The thing we did want to convey, at the trial and want to, make sure the board is aware of the important role her autoimmune disease played in her struggle with documentation and then just not being able to finish residency. Dr. Chan has mixed connective tissue disease, that is an autoimmune disorder, sometimes known as lupus. She has a family history. Her mother, who's a retired engineer, has an autoimmune disorder. Her sister, who's a licensed pharmacist, has an autoimmune disorder. Her autoimmune disorder first emerged during medical school and was diagnosed during medical school. And, she even took a leave of absence to basically get the right treatment so she could come back and finish medical school. If you're not familiar with autoimmune diseases, Dr. Chan, testified that it's not constant, it waxes and wanes over time. Some periodically she will experience flare-ups in her system that, is often in response to things like not getting enough sleep or, coming down with another illness like a cold or the flu. During flare-ups, her symptoms, some of her notable symptoms include difficulty walking, difficulty typing using her hands due to swelling, and also fatigue. Just general fatigue is another main symptom for her. These are brought under control, through adjusting medications, getting the right amount of sleep, taking care of herself, basically. Her autoimmune disease did play, in our opinion, a key role in her late documentation and the professionalism warning and the probation. The ALJ in the PFD included findings that Dr. Chan did experience flare-ups from her autoimmune disease during residency. He found that this may have played a part in her professionalism issues during residency and that her symptoms were likely exacerbated due to the stress and sleep deprivation that are usually associated with medical residency. In general, the thrust of Dr. Chan's testimony was her disease became worse over time, was worse in its third year. And at that point, it was really hard to balance residency and the 70 and 80-hour work weeks and just her health and getting enough sleep and recovery. We're not presenting her autoimmune disease as an excuse. Again, it's more of an explanation. Her rheumatologist, since leaving residency, her disease is under much better control. She's not taking steroids anymore. She sees her rheumatologist every 3 to 4 months instead of monthly. Her rheumatologist testified, and this was the same rheumatologist who treated her during residency. She testified that Dr. Chan's disorders are well controlled and that from a medical standpoint, she does not believe her disease would prevent her from practicing as a physician. Dr. Chan herself testified about, the lessons she learned about maintaining a good work-life balance, getting enough sleep, taking care of herself, and, how important that is to her health. And obviously if she becomes licensed. If Dr. Chan is licensed, she hopes to work part-time, probably in a general practice setting. And, assuming that goes well, transitioned into full-time, she does not plan on seeking a position that is 70, 80 hours a week. That's probably not consistent with her autoimmune disorder at this time. The second eligibility issue concerns her application. I do want to point out that she filed her application during residency, and this was prior to her receiving a professionalism warning or probation. When she filed her application, it was accurate. The issue is really that she did not amend it subsequent when those events happened. Again, she accepted responsibility for this. There are a couple mitigating factors. One, her residency program told her that the professionalism warning was confidential, not reportable to the medical board. That's in the record in an official letter given to her. Again, not an excuse, but it does help provide some context. Similarly with the probation, her program told her they were reporting it to the board. Again, and they did, all this was reported to the board and, the explanation was obtained. But we just submit these are worth considering. It's not, again, and she acknowledges that she should have timely updated her application. I urge the panel to read the ALJ's conclusion section. He really summarizes the different factors that would support a decision to license Dr. Chan. And finally, I just want to point out, we submitted a written submission before this meeting pointing out a potential outcome that the board might consider: a public reprimand, administrative penalty, continuing education, restriction to a group practice. And if the board is concerned about Dr. Chan's autoimmune disorder, referral to PHP, which does have the ability to monitor, patients with physical illnesses in addition to substance abuse and mental illness. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, you may proceed.
I just wanted to address a couple of points. First, I would like to point out to the board that the judge clearly found that when Dr. Chan filed her application, she had already been given a written professionalism warning and had been counseled regarding her delinquent charts. This is in finding of fact number 9, if you are interested in looking at the actual proposal for decision. Additionally, shortly after the application, other events transpired, including her probation, and that was not reported. It has not been alleged or argued that Dr. Chan's autoimmune disorder caused her to not amend her application, rendering it misleading, and it stayed that way. It was never changed. Additionally, although the board recognizes that her illness or condition may have contributed to some things. There was evidence in the record that Dr. Chan didn't take part in accommodations, didn't submit her ADA paperwork to help herself in being able to keep up with the demands of the residency program. And it was sufficient enough for the residency program to take note of it and address it multiple times. They had a number of meetings to address this with her. That's all documented in writing, and it just wasn't ever corrected. So the fact, that as Mr. Leip said, that it may have only been a few charts. I don't think that is relevant here. It could have been one patient's chart, and whether or not that patient was harmed it doesn't matter. The fact is that medical records are very impactful in patient care, as many of you know, and the possibility, the likelihood of that being harmful to someone was there, no matter if it was one chart or 50 charts. And Mr. Leip was correct. It's purely at the board's discretion to grant or deny the license, and that the hearing on the merits did provide for a more thorough gathering of information and record. Nonetheless, the more information that was provided enabled this judge to say that she was ineligible, that the evidence showed that she was rendered ineligible for a license. Also, the residency program's decision to take the steps that they did in their disciplinary actions shouldn't be questioned by the board. That's not our job to look into whether or not they did the right thing. The fact of the matter is that she was disciplined, and there is ample evidence of that in the record. I think that might be all I have. So I thank you for your time and look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Burns.
Can I just respond to one?
Yeah, just
thing
real
very
quick.
briefly?
I'll lay out kind of the groundwork, and then we can do that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you've kind of heard from both sides. What we'll do now is there'll be an opportunity for some questions. So we have like one clarifying comment that will allow, but then the board can ask questions of Dr. Chan and her counsel This is not the opportunity to relitigate the case, but they can ask clarifying questions. The overall spectrum of what the board can ultimately decide is to maintain the decision to determine ineligible and deny licensure. The board could grant licensure. The board could do something in between with some type of restrictions in there. And the board also, at the end of having any questions, has the opportunity to go into executive session. So I'll go ahead and let you make your comment, and then we'll start taking some questions from the board.
Yeah, in regards to the judge finding Dr. Chan ineligible, the judge did find there are 2 ineligibility grounds, but the judge is also very clear, and I think the parties are in agreement that the board can still license someone who has grounds of ineligibility. The act does allow for that, and the ALJ is very clear on that, including in his conclusion section laying out the reasons that would, if the board decides to license, Dr. Chan would support that.
Thank you. Open up to the board members. Dr. Zaffron.
Yep, thank you. Dr. Chan, you doing okay? All right, I know this is hard, and I think it shows a lot of courage that you actually came here and you're sitting in front of us asking some of these hard questions. And I know that you look incredibly nervous, but thank you for being here. So you understand why we have a lot of concerns, right? I mean, we certainly don't look at having a medical condition as a reason not to license someone. It's obviously a lot of the conditions, that how you behave and how you act in managing and dealing with that. So, the concern about the application, understanding that there's some mitigating factors, because you have a condition doesn't take away the responsibility of making sure that medical record keeping is not there, making accommodations for that. That kind of stress is not going to go away, if we were going to grant you licensure. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions around that. First of all, were you able to get licensed anywhere else in any other state?
I haven't attempted because I've only clinically practiced here in Texas.
Okay.
I didn't think it was appropriate.
Okay. I understand that you have a condition and it's being managed and treated, and you found out that you had this condition while you were in residency training, correct?
I was found out in medical school.
Okay, in medical school. Okay. And I'm presuming that you're getting treatment and therapy for it?
Correct.
Okay. So let's say that we grant you a license and you have a flare-up, which happens with an autoimmune condition, and you have patients that need to be taken care of, that they need to be seen. How would you anticipate that you're going to manage that? Because the patient's conditions are not going to go away because you have a flare-up, right?
Correct.
And they're going to still need to be managed. We're still going to need to have adequate documentation. Let's say I grant you a license. What are you going to do if that happens?
So I have learned a lot of anticipatory work. So I'll have those things ready to go ahead of time based on what are possible possible options, and then make sure that those are available to the patients should those situations come up.
So do you think maybe having a practice partner in a group where they would be able to take over, making sure they manage your patients if you have a flare-up, do you think that's something that would help?
Absolutely. I definitely believe in teamwork as a medical practice.
Okay. So I understand that you weren't able to complete your residency in pediatrics. So what are your plans if, again, assuming we come up with some structure that's out there, what type of specialty would you are you just going to practice general practice? Are you planning on trying to reapply? What's your plans as far as that's concerned?
Absolutely. So my plan would be to try and find somewhere for general pediatrics, and then get the clinical, get on the ball, and then return to residency once a position opens up. I have been looking for spots, just they're few and far between when it's not for residency match. So.
Okay. You do understand, of course, when there are concerns about things that you haven't done, and when we ask questions, whether it's us or whether it's a residency program or whether it's a practice that you're in or a hospital that you're credentialed at, the importance of responding, answering, addressing the issues that are raised. I know, again, in residency, that's early on before you've started your career, but you've kind of started with a lot of hiccups there. So again, kind of going through this experience, would you respond a little bit differently?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Learning the ways to communicate and share what, and to anticipate what sort of things are needed ahead of time has really taught, in residency, has taught me what needs to be done in medical practice.
Yeah. Now, you know that, of course, before us is the option of not doing anything at all, which, obviously there's a lot in front of us that's kind of hard to do. Or not grant you a license, which is well within our discretion. Or we can do a lot of oversight over you if we choose to do so. And again, I'm not going to speak for the rest of the board. I'm only one person on the board. Are you willing to do a lot of the things that we may ask you to do? Because if we do decide to do that, there's probably going to be a tremendous amount of oversight over your practice because, number one, you're already kind of starting off on the wrong foot, unfortunately. But I do know that the state has invested a lot in training you. Well, I think, whether it's UTMB or Central Florida, whatever it might be, they've all invested a lot in taking somebody who's incredibly smart. And I just want to make sure and I understand that if we were to use that discretion, is that something that you'd embrace or something that you're going to, be resistant to?
I would definitely embrace it. I kind of think it as every experience is what can you learn from it. So having more people to learn from in different ways would definitely, I would be very open to that. And because we have to constantly change with the changing times, so we're always learning. So it's just part of the position.
And you do understand that ultimately, at the end of the day, our job and responsibility is patient safety.
Correct.
Right? It's not about giving you a license.
No.
It's about making sure that the public is safe. So whatever we might do, whether it's not granting you a license or giving a lot of oversight, at the end of the day, our responsibility is making sure that we are not putting our patients in jeopardy, right?
Absolutely.
And I need you to understand that context of why and what we do also. So, all right, I'll open it up for other board members if they have any questions.
Not seeing any hands come up yet. There we go. Dr. Tibbles.
Yeah, be real quick. I'm not sure exactly what the path would be, but any intention or thoughts about going back and completing residency?
Yes, I do hope to go back and complete residency. It's important for the training.
And Sharif, maybe this is a question for you, or it's not obvious to me what that path would be or how our decision, what we do would impact our ability to, get into.
Yeah, Jason, we'll
residency.
talk a bit more about that in executive session.
Got it.
Yeah. Ms. Burns.
Hi, I just wanted to bring up one point in terms of continuing the residency program that I didn't mention earlier. It's been almost 3 years since Dr. Chan has treated a patient. I think she may have tried to continue that program to some extent, but was unsuccessful. Nonetheless, in the last almost 3 years, she hasn't done so. And she hasn't been actively practicing. And I think that's something important for the board to consider in this matter as well.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. If you could, let the board know what you have been up to since that time.
So I was very, very sick by the time I finished residency. I'm sorry. So I spent so with autoimmune disorders, the medications can take months to go into full effect. So the first part of after the end of my contract was focusing on getting healthy and strong, because I absolutely agree about patient safety. Many days I was able to work. But I knew that there was the risk of that I could I wasn't at my best. So instead of my ego, I would call in sick because I knew I couldn't risk patient safety. So I've been focusing on getting healthy. I have been keeping up with all the literature, and my goal is to be healthy because you need to be at a whole other level of physical health to go back to residency. So part of hoping to gain this license is to incorporate the clinical practice into that, so that when I am able to find a position, to be strong enough and have everything ready to go so that I can finish my residency year strongly.
And just as a factual matter, the last time Dr. Chan practiced, as far as treated a patient, was May 2022. Is that correct? So right around 2.5 years ago.
Have you been working anywhere since residency ended? But
I've been doing a lot of volunteer work, and my little one has developmental issues, so that we've been keeping up with the literature in that aspect as well.
okay.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of volunteer work?
I've been fundraising for my sorority work. I have been helping tutor old classmates and stuff, and nothing really official, just what I can do with my schedule.
Great, thank you. Say, Dr. Quinones, I think you're first.
Thank you. Dr. Chan, my name is Manny Quinones. I'm a family physician on the board. First of all, I want to applaud your strength and courage in being here today. I can tell from a very small photograph or a very small image on my screen that you're very stressed out, and I applaud you for your strength and your conviction. At the same time, I want you to understand that the life and the rigors of private practice are incredibly stressful and very real. Even though your dream to become a physician and a pediatrician is commendable, and there is considerable investment of effort and time and money on your behalf, as well as the state's investment in your education. I would caution you and hope that going forward in the future, if in fact you are licensed, going forward that you create a plan with your support team, create a plan to deal with the stress and with the physical and the mental demands of practice. It doesn't end with residency. If anything, it changes, but it's still very demanding. But the good part is that you have more control over your life once you finish your residency. So I would strongly encourage you to continue your therapy and your support team. At the same time, I know that you've sacrificed much, and residency is extremely demanding. I would encourage you to go back and finish your training. It'll be a tremendous accomplishment for you. And I wish you all the luck in the future. Good luck.
Thank you.
This is Del Rosso.
Thank you so much. Dr. Chan, thank you for being here. You alluded to getting stronger and, the time you needed and putting patient first, you would call sick. Do you feel right now that you confidently can tell the board that you're stronger, that you're ready, that you've gained the physical and mental strength you were developing to be prepared? If and when whatever decision is taken?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure I'm understanding your question.
Do you feel you're prepared at this point? You said you took days off because you didn't feel your illness, allowed you to have the strength and to really put patient safety first. are you confident right now that you are strong enough to, partake into this patient safety if necessary? I just want to make sure you feel you've really gathered the strength to be in a stressful situation.
Absolutely. I've really focused on getting those mental strengths, getting those supports, because I do know, like, going through residency, what is needed. When I first went into residency, I didn't know because I didn't have that experience. And knowing what I know now, I've made sure I'm stronger than I was even before I started residency. So I definitely feel prepared to go into clinical practice, go back to clinical practice.
Thank you, Dr. Chan.
And Mrs. Barnes?
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your candor and your willingness to step in front of a room full of strangers and tell your story. You mentioned that you had been reading literature and trying to keep up. Did you do any continuing education hours, or, what type of, how are you preparing yourself to keep up with medicine? Medicine changes every other week almost. Help me understand how well prepared you are in the world of pediatrics.
So I have been reviewing board material as well as keeping up with whenever all the new guidelines, when they come up, I review them and make sure that they are correct. It's small beans and potatoes, but I live in a very tight-knit community, so all the parents come and ask me questions about all their children from different ages. So I'm always looking things up, making sure that I'm correct, helping them, guiding them, telling them whether it's something to be seen, something to worry about, something to just watch and wait. Just doing what a general pediatrician would do, just for my community, just talking to them. I know that's very informal.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Grace, if you might, with the discussion on the active practice of about 2.5 years since last formally having a patient, you mind just kind of laying out briefly for the board? Sounds like we may be going into executive session, something for them to consider to perhaps remedy active practice.
Sure. For licensure applicants, they have to demonstrate that they've been actively practicing for one of the last 2 years prior to the date of their application. As it's been already pointed out, she was last with UTMB in June of 2022. So that's obviously been over 2 years from present time. Her application was submitted in August of 2021 while she was still part of the program. So at the time that she submitted the application and appeared before the licensure committee, there wasn't an active practice issue at that time based on how licensure evaluates active practice. But now it's obviously the end of 2024 and time has passed since she has last actively practiced.
Right. And so what recommendations might be made to remedy active practice?
So the most common option that is given to licensure applicants that can't demonstrate that active practice requirement is typically an evaluation with K-STAR or a similar type program such as PACE, so that they can be assessed and evaluated by K-STAR, by PACE, and see if where they are in terms of their ability. And then based on that assessment, they could be offered through K-STAR a mini residency to get them back up to speed in terms of their practice and competence.
Great.
There could be also an agreed order if the board feels that that's a way to remedy some sort of practice issue as well. But most typically for licensure cases, it is the K-STAR or similar program evaluation.
Great, thank you. And Council, you had laid out some recommendations before, potentially for this case. If you could repeat what that was.
Yeah, obviously it's not presented as this is the only, it's just, something to spark thought. But what we had proposed was a public reprimand, administrative penalty, additional CE hours, restriction to a group practice, and potentially referral to PHP if the board feels that's necessary for an autoimmune disorder. I will defer to Ms. Underborn on this. I do know that in past cases, there has been an issue with K-STAR for a physician who has not completed a residency yet, where they were not eligible to do the mini residency requirement. That may have changed, or it's possible I'm wrong on that, but just I believe I'm remembering that from a prior case. But again, I'll defer to Ms. Underborn on that.
Yes, I do know what you're referring to. I would have to check back into my archives from Tracy Adams, who is our point of contact with K-STAR, to confirm that. So that may take me a moment, but there may be an issue of the mini residency option because she hasn't completed the a traditional residency program. I would again have to check to see if they would even be able to do an assessment because of her not completing a residency program in its entirety. So that will take me one moment, please.
Grace, while you're doing that, I understand also that we have impaired physician programs also, correct? And some pathways for that from that standpoint too?
Yeah. And I'll jump in here. Not really, because it's kind of the same path. If we've had a physician, say, who's impaired and been out for a period of time, we use K-STAR quite often. We send them for a competency evaluation. They do some simulations, that kind of thing. So the pathway you're thinking of, yes, it exists, but it's really along the K-STAR lines anyway. So there's not something independent of that. But so that falls in the same kind of realm or arena as the mini residency and the K-STAR evaluations that Ms. Underborn was just describing.
Yeah, I guess my only question, Scott, is that I understand, of course, when you finish your internship, you're considered a general practitioner. And, there is potentially a path where people don't necessarily have residency, but they're able to practice as GPs. I know that's not considered a residency, but I guess we'll have to find out from Grace, what that looks like and what that might entail. So that's kind of like what I was thinking from the standpoint of a GP and what that would look like, even if it's for a period of time. But it doesn't seem like we have a clear answer to that yet.
When you say, we do have a clear answer. After, just as the general parameters, Dr. Zafran, after 1 year of a residency program, a domestic or Canadian graduate from an approved medical school in Canada or the US is eligible to be licensed. Now, we issue licenses a lot to people that are in their first, second, even their third years of residency, but they have to practice within the residency program, and they can only moonlight or work outside the residency program, even with a full license, with permission of the program. In this particular case, and with the K-STAR program, what that is that Dr. Zafran is talking about is it's a competency evaluation where they can go and they set up a remediation program, but again, they have to be full licensed, and there's no alternate per se GC pathway. You either have a full license or you don't in order to practice. So even that pathway you're thinking for impaired physicians, that's always somebody who's fully licensed, or if K-STAR gives them the evaluation, what we get, Dr. Zafran, I think what you're actually thinking about may be, we get a report back and says from K-STAR that may say, we did evaluation of Dr. Jones and all of these things we identified that she was doing wonderfully. These are the areas of deficiency and here's our recommended remediation. So I think maybe that's what you're thinking of, but there is no alternate pathway that's just a general practitioner. After 1 year, you can get your license, but again, it goes to the same thing. If you, let's say someone got it after 1 year, quit residency, they could practice as a physician in any area they wanted, but they have to meet standard of care. And of course, that implicates all kinds of things, about credentialing and insurance and Medicare, Medicaid. But the general concept is 1 year as a resident from a domestic graduate, you can get your medical license and you can practice wherever you want in Texas, but you have to meet the standard of care.
Yeah, no, I know, Scott. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is from the standpoint of evaluating competency, And, right now it's kind of the chicken or the egg, it sounds like the only pathway to evaluate competency is having a full license, but there's a hesitancy to grant a full license until you evaluate competency. And that's kind of what we're trying to figure.
And again, Grace can help on this. If they're willing to take her, even if you issue a license, it is for the purpose of the K-STAR evaluation only and can be used for nothing else. I think that's what we're talking about, Dr. Zafran. And we have issued those, and I think Dr. Martinez and Dr. Farmer and your members of your licensure committee, we have seen that where we will say we are going to issue you a license, and this is more for the impaired physicians that were once licensed and lost it for whatever, Dr. Zafran, for whatever reason. We say we're giving you a full license, but only for the limited purpose of attending K-STAR to do the evaluation. I think that's maybe what you're thinking of. Grace?
So it looks like, as I'm reviewing the K-STAR information that I have and also on their website, that some of the documentation that they require to complete the assessment is proof of obviously a medical school graduation via the diploma. It does require copies of any residency certificates. So the fact that she has not completed a residency program seems like that would make her ineligible for a K-STAR assessment. So that may be an issue in terms of how to get her evaluated if K-STAR appears to require that they show proof of a residency completion. Typically for licensure cases that we do refer to K-STAR, they have an active practice issue, but they have completed a residency program either recent, 2 years or so, or even longer.
Yeah, I guess one of the questions I would ask, Grace, is this may be one of those unique circumstances where maybe the question to K-STAR specifically about if, again, there's a lot of presumptions and assumptions here, but it does sound like there may be a question to them as to evaluating competency on someone who has an impaired condition, has gone through 2/3 of their residency, but has not finished their certificate for those kind of reasons. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have that kind of evaluation, during their residency, or even a PHP evaluation during their residency. I think a lot of that may have preempted where we are right now. But anyway, it's just kind of good to know what the options are as we discuss this.
Dr. Nayak?
There's something I wanted to discuss. Can we go into executive session?
Yes. Are there any other questions right now for Dr. Chan or counsel?
I had one.
Go ahead, Dr. Bhatia.
Dr. Chan, you had mentioned that you do have full intentions to go back and complete your residency, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so one of the options perhaps might be, if you are going to do that, that you could have a physician in training license as well, correct?
If she's in a residency, then we could issue the physician training. Correct.
I'm well aware of that. I was asking if Dr. Chen was aware of that.
I'm sorry, I'm not truly understanding what is being asked in that question.
I might be able to better
maybe
answer.
somebody could give a description of that.
Yeah, so Dr. Chan's, medium long-term goal is to go back to residency. Since the hearing, she has applied to some residency programs, was denied, unfortunately. Part of the problem is, again, because she has been out of practice for a period of time, in addition to the issues at residency, it's almost the point where she needs to practice and earn some clinical time before she's probably going to get a bite at the apple, so to speak, from a residency program. But also just from her standpoint, to prove, to get that experience, build up her stamina as a practicing physician, prior to making the jump, back into a 70, 80 hour a week residency. That I think is another consideration that she's considering.
Well, but she had mentioned that it's her goal, and her first most important thing is to get back into residency, right?
It is. I guess in order to get the PIT permit, you have to be admitted and in a residency, which of course she's not right now, which is, one of the reasons we're here.
So what, then if not residency, what are your intentions if you were to have a license, an unrestricted, full unrestricted license?
If I could answer that. So
No,
part of
actually,
that,
I'd like for her to answer, please.
Devinder, 1 second. So part of it is actually what we actually can restrict her to do. We can actually lay those parameters. I'll let her answer the question, but part of it is also what we can restrict somebody to do. You can have an unrestricted license, or you could have a license that we restrict under some very, very strict criteria. So that's kind of part of what may be a conversation in executive session.
Okay.
But if you'd like to answer again, what you're practicing if you were granted some type of license.
If I was granted some type of license, I would try and join a general practice, initially part-time, and then as my stamina increases, I would increase my volume and work hours and go from there. And then when, as this is going on, obviously look for the open positions that may or may not be available for residency, since they are few and far between across the country.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw Mr. Cogano's hand briefly. Yeah, I think Ms. Barnes' hand's been up for a bit from when she asked before.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, not seeing any other hands up or hearing any other questions. If there is a motion to go into executive session, the board can discuss some options and get some more legal advice.
So move to go into executive session.
Okay, so Dr. Nyack is making a motion to go into executive session for private consultations and advice of counsel and
Second.
deliberations regarding licensure applications. And it's been
Second,
seconded.
Dr. Quinones.
All right, great, thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that the board close the meeting to the public. Is there any other objection by any of the board members? There being no objection, this meeting is now closed to the public at 9:13 a.m. on December 13th, 2024. Deliberations concerning licensure applications and the character and fitness of applicants under the authority of the Texas Medical Practice Act, sections 152.009 and 155.058 Occupations Code. While in executive session, the board will not take any action, make any decision, or vote with regard to any matter that may be considered or discussed.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, Dr. Chan and her counsel have left the room. We're about to close the door, and then we'll get the go-ahead from Alicia when we're ready to begin discussion. see. Let's see. Alicia's everyone
Yes, sir.
back, and recording is still going. The door is open here, and Dr. Chan and counsel are back with us.
Okay, so the executive session ended at 10:06 a.m. on December 13th, 2024. There was no final action, decision, or vote with regard to any matter considered or discussed in the executive session. A certified agenda of the executive session was made. I guess I would just start off before I ask for any comments from the other board members. So obviously there's two major concerns that we have to grapple with. One, of course, is the falsification of the application itself. And I understand that there may have been some mitigating factors, et cetera, but that is obviously something that is very serious, is that your application had some falsifications in it, and there's going to have to be some ramifications with that specifically. The second part is that you did have issues in managing how you're taking care of patients, whether it be with medical record keeping, whatever it might be. The third issue is that you've been out of taking care of patients for about 2.5 years. And that also is something that has to be addressed. Those are three different things, but they're all three very serious things that we have to figure out a way how to manage. Having said that, I get the impression that you are a very compassionate person, that this is something that you cherish, and that you want to do. And that also is something that we have to think about. And if we were to go down that certain pathway, how do we help you do that in a way that is, number one, safe for patients, but number two, sets you up for success. And that's a big part of why we were just having a conversation about what options might be. That's taken quite a bit of time. I hope you understand that means that we're taking this seriously, and trying to figure out that pathway. So before I go in with options that we have in front of us, I just want to make sure I give the opportunity for any of our board members to make any comments or anything like that before we go any further. Would anybody like to make any comments? Okay. All right. So what I would propose, and I'm going to ask Mr. Carlton and Mr. Freshour to help me in this process, because there's a lot to unravel here. I am going to propose or make a motion to grant full licensure, but with significant restrictions. And those restrictions would include the following. And again, if I'm missing anything, I'm going to ask you to help me with this process. So number one, it would involve a K-STAR assessment. Number two, there would be the provisions of a preceptorship within a group practice for a period of at least a year. That would involve you, number one, finding a preceptor and coming up with a detailed plan as to what that would involve, but it would have to be also within a group practice setting. There would be provision in there for a PACE course with risk management, because I think that's an important component of you also helping understand how you mitigate risk. You have a flare-up, you get frustrated, we don't want that frustration to lead to not doing what is important, what is necessary to also properly take care of yourself, but more importantly, to also take care of patients. And I don't minimize taking care of yourself, but we got to make sure that we take care of our patients and also take care of yourself, right? It would include chart monitoring, which means that the board would have oversight to make sure that you're doing what is necessary. So preceptorship, group setting, but there would also be chart monitoring. There would also be a referral to Texas PHP, and that is the taking care of you part, right? To make sure that you're taken care of, that you are making sure that you're managing your health properly, and that you're appropriately being looked at and overseen for your own health and for your own well-being. The other part, of course, which is addressing the falsification part and so forth, would have to involve an administrative penalty of $5,000. That's an appropriate amount. And a public reprimand. That is to make sure that we are also addressing that falsification part, to make sure that that is addressed, that is part of the public record and so forth. Did I miss anything?
For the preceptorship, you have a 1 year time period. Is there amount of hours you want to require that she do per week within that setting?
So I was presuming 30 hours or are we
30.
playing
I
less
know
than
she mentioned doing part-time is what she was.
Is 30 hours too much for you, or should we put a floor that is less than that? We can make it
30
20
hours.
hours and then you can do more, of course, if need be.
Okay, whichever,
20
any
to 30.
option, just not 80
Ms.
hours.
Barnes?
Like 20 to 30.
Okay.
Minimum of
Stick with
20.
my time.
Let's say a minimum of 20 hours.
Okay.
I would presume that on hard days, it may be 20. On better days, it may be 30, right?
Yeah.
So it would be a minimum of that on a weekly, let's say a minimum of 20 hours on a weekly basis. With the chart monitoring, of course, we would be getting reports back as to how you're doing. With the preceptor, you would be getting coaching as to making sure that you're getting advice as to how you can do better, all that kind of stuff. But all this is going to be predicated on an initial assessment by K-STAR. They can't do a mini residency for you because you haven't completed a residency. So we're going down the pathway of a group practice with a preceptor involved, with a minimum number of hours, with the PACE program that helps you as far as risk management and so forth, and the PHP referral.
Dr. Brett,
Yeah,
I was going to say, Dr. Brett is our medical director. Do you want to talk a little bit about the chart monitoring, the cycles, and how that works?
And Mr. Carlton, I think at this point, a couple things, and we can talk about chart monitoring. I think that would be good. We need to know how many cycles of chart monitoring, Dr. Zafarian, and also on the K-STAR assessment. It sounds like it would run contemporaneously, potentially, with this group or institutional setting with the preceptorship restrictions on it. Would you want that K-STAR assessment completed within, I think we normally give, and Dr. Martinez and Wendy and Kamisha may jump in on this, I think we normally ask it within about the first 120 days of the order. Now, it would run concurrently with, setting up the group practice and beginning, but you would want that done near the front end of all of this, to get so I think you want to put parameters on those two items, Dr. Zafran.
Yeah, so I would almost want it to be within the first 90 days, but I'll say 120 days just to kind of give you the time to be able to set this up, because this is a little bit different and it's a little bit novel. So we can give you 120 days, but again, it can happen in conjunction with you setting up the preceptorship with the group practice and so forth. I would say 8 cycles of chart monitoring. Now, 8 cycles basically means about 2 years. Obviously, we're talking about a group practice and a preceptorship for 1 year minimum. My advice to you would probably be the longer you make it to make sure that you are comfortable is probably better. Now, after a year, you can come back to us and showcase that you've done great, that you've been, doing wonderful and everything is fine, and we can always reduce that. You can also, after a year, get accepted into a residency program. And all this would change because you would get a PIT license. Although if you had a full license, I guess that would remain, even though it was restricted. So that would still be there. My hope is that this would create a pathway for you to get back into practicing medicine. You may find that there are other things that you have a passion for as far as long-term, pediatrics may still be it. Preventative medicine may be it. Going to physician health and well-being may be it. We don't know. But, hopefully this will help create that pathway to, number one, set you up for success and get you into doing something that would be best for you and your patients as you move forward in this endeavor. Now, I will tell you that we are creating a pathway, but we're also having a lot of oversight over you. And the onus is going to be on you to take that opportunity and to either make it work or to not make it work. And if we're sitting here a year from now with a whole bunch of other struggles that you've had, and everybody has struggles, but being able to work through those struggles, again, that's where PHP is, that's where having a preceptor is, all that kind of stuff. We may come back a year from now and say, this is not working. Or we may say, you're doing great. Let's continue it on. The onus is going to be on you. I understand and I know that you're in a situation right now where you were faced with very limited options. It was almost like a catch-22. And that's why we've spent an hour trying to figure out how we can create that pathway for you. I hope you take that as a second chance. And you're looking at a lot of very compassionate, but also some very skeptical board members. But we do want to kind of give you that chance because we see your passion, we see your contrition, we also see that your desire to be able to showcase to us that you're going to make this work. And I hope that we sit here a year from now in a setting similar to this, in a much better way, that you showcase, hey, I've made this work and I'm making you guys proud. And here I am making the state of Texas proud by being able to take care of my patients, being able to take care of myself, and creating a pathway forward. Did we miss anything? So a motion is out there. Scott,
The motion
before
would
I
be
ask
to
for a
accept
second.
hold on, it would be, first you would want to accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law, and then grant the license and subject to everything you've got. So that is your motion, right, Dr. Zaprin?
Yeah, so the motion started off with accepting the findings of fact and basically going forth with the entire motion that I put forth. Yes.
Right, findings of fact,
Findings and
conclusions of law, with a
And then the
final
motion as
order
we laid it
with
out.
these, with the full license, granting a full license with the restrictions as specified. Okay.
Correct.
Very good.
So there's a
Thank you.
motion and it needs to be seconded, and then there's some hands up.
Dr. Martinez seconds the motion.
Dr. Martinez, second. I know, Dr. Brett, I know we had asked you, but Scott kind of covered some of it there. If there's anything else you wanted to add, or I think you got it.
No. So the question I have is twofold. One is that if we have a chart monitor, typically we match those to the specialty, the board specialty in which the physician is practicing. I imagine without a board specialty, probably family practice might best match this, but we can figure that out when it comes to that. Secondly, how would you like this to interact should she match in a residency program? Because she would still have this full license, but with the order and the terms of the order, and you might want to consider what you want to do should she match into a residency.
Yep. So first of all, I would say that I would want the chart monitoring to match the group specialty that she is making a relationship with. It may be family practice, it may be pediatrics. So I would basically give some leeway to whatever group practice and preceptorship. I'm presuming she's going to want it to be pediatrics. She may not find that as an option. It may only be family practice, so we can match it with that. And to your point, Robert, Dr. Brett, I think it would be appropriate that if she does get matched into a residency, that she may need to come back before the board to evaluate and modify the order based on that.
Right.
Does that sound reasonable?
And
Yeah.
I think what you'd have to do is, because you can only have one license, is I think she would probably need to terminate that license or terminate the order and then just work under the pit. But again, I think we can jump over that bridge if and when it happens, because we don't restrict someone in a pit program. They do what the residency program dictates. So, but again, that's why this one's kind of messy, but if she goes back into it, we can handle it procedurally and we'll deal with that at a later point if it comes about, I think is the best way, and not worry about it at this point.
Okay, Dr. Jones.
I just wanted to make it known, I'm going to recuse myself from the vote because I showed up late, halfway through executive session on this one. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So we're just clarifying some of the courses offered by PACE, if we need to make any modification to the order.
I'm not saying
The motion, I should say.
Yeah.
So-
I'm not seeing a risk management program with PACE.
I know, Wendy. So we're looking
Okay.
at this. So I think the option that we have with PACE is, see that? So there's one of the things in PACE is managing high impact emotions, which I think would probably be the most, I mean, there's ethics and professionalism in there. I think we're kind of addressing that already. Professional boundaries, I don't think is an issue. I think probably managing high impact emotions would probably fit the best out of all this.
Okay.
All right, so that's a modification to your order.
Yeah.
All right, and Dr. Martinez, did you want to, I think you were the second, correct?
Yeah, I'll second Dr. Zaprin's motion.
All right, so we have a motion. There's a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed?
What happened to the procedure on this bed?
Okay, I don't think I hear a no. All right, so the motion passes. So you understand the provisions. Please look at this as a lifeline. Just understand that we tried really hard to make this work for you. So I think you're going to take this opportunity, and good luck to you.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome. All right. So with that, we are going to move on. And, we took a little bit of time on this, but I think this was extremely important. And thank you guys for taking the time to deliberate and to be very thoughtful about this. And thank you to our council for the advice to helping get to a resolution here. Very, very important. And again, an indication as to how seriously we take this and how, we try to be as thoughtful as possible with this. With that, I'm going to hand this over to Brent to give us our executive director report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Zafran. No, it's been a long morning, so again, I'll try to keep this brief, and we still have more items to go over here towards the end of the agenda. We'll go ahead and start with our budget update. Joey, if you are ready.
Ready. Thank you, Brent.
All the money that we have. Right.
Tons and tons of money, millions. Good morning, board members. So I'll be brief with my report. In your budget report that you have available on Laserfish, you have information on fiscal year 2024 and 2025. Just an update on fiscal year 2024. We ended the fiscal year with revenue collections of 41.5 million. That's 4% more than what we collected the prior year, 1.6 million. And for fiscal year 2025, quarter one ended in November. We have some delayed revenue collections, so you may see a lot of red on the report, but we anticipate those revenue collections leveling out in quarter two, so we should have better numbers to report at our next meeting. We are monitoring those numbers just to make sure that what we're seeing is accurate and that there won't be any impact on our revenue collections, especially going into session. And then, we're just getting ready for session. I do want to mention that we are in I know there's conversations about in-person board meetings. The finance team has reached out to the AT&T Conference Center. So we do have the opportunity to set a block of hotel rooms at the state rate if we do that with advance notice. So pending further conversation with Dr. Zafran and Brent on that, if we need to move forward on making reservations for future meetings, we can start that process to secure the state rate for y'all. So pending any other questions, I'll hand it back to you, Brent.
Joey, that is fantastic. For many of you who know, the AT&T Conference Center is within walking distance of the agency and probably the most convenient place to stay at. So seeing if there's no other objection, I would ask that we actually move forward with that for the March meeting or for any of the meetings where the full board is going to be in attendance. I think that would be great.
Perfect. Absolutely. If anybody plans on not being in attendance, or if you're not sure yet, let us know so we can just monitor that reservation and cancel it with advance notice, because we have the opportunity to do direct bill so that those invoices will come to us. It'll be no burden on you. And then we'll take care of that after the board meeting as well.
Yeah, and since this has been a while since we've had an in-person board meeting, if all the board members that do plan on coming here and staying in a hotel, if you can let Joey and Laura know about that, and we'll make sure we get the reservation done for you. And like Joey said, if there needs to be a cancellation, just let us know as soon as possible. Dr. Quinones?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention for DPRC members, if you might want to consider getting there on Wednesday evening, just because it's a rough start on to drive in for.
Well, I think typically speaking, it would be for Wednesday night and Thursday night, unless somebody says otherwise. I think the default would be Wednesday night, Thursday night, unless somebody says that. We start 9 o'clock sharp Thursday morning. So it would be a very early drive for some folks, but the plan would be for 2 nights.
I agree. It's just that we haven't done it in so long. I wanted to make sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you, Joey. So I'll cover a couple of other things. Talking about House Bill 1998, Dr. Zafran already spoke to it earlier, but just to give you guys some additional numbers on what's happened over the past year. Before House Bill 1998 went into effect, we had a little over 33,000 of our physicians were already fingerprinted. And as you heard from Dr. Zafran, we've had over 40,000 get fingerprinted since then as additional. And we still have about 29,000 left to fingerprint, which should be completed approximately this time next year. As far as the National Practitioner Database Continuous Query, since House Bill 1998 went into effect, again, that was brand new for all of our physicians. We've had about 65,000 of our physicians get enrolled in the program, and we've had about 8,000 National Practitioner Data Bank hits come back to the board for review. We also are doing the updates now, and between the fingerprinting and the National Practitioner Data Bank continuous query reports we received, we've had about 88 profile updates that we have done based on the fingerprinting and the reviews, and also in those push notifications brings the total of about 122. So things are moving along a lot faster as far as the reporting goes. So House Bill 1998 has been effective. Thankfully, again, our physicians by and large are a group of people that are going to follow the law and follow the rules. So there are not a ton of things that are coming back that need to be updated, but we're happy that we did get those 122 profiles updated faster than we would have been able to do prior to 1998 going into effect. For legislative updates, Tori may give some additional details here, but we have seen several bills filed that were filed in the last legislative session that did not end up becoming law. Some of those were expected that we would see again. Some of the big things that the board is looking at are the alternative licensure pathways for international medical graduates. Those are individuals that may not have been able to get into the 2-year residency requirement for IMGs. Also licensure for medical graduates, medical school graduates who did not match into any residency and were able to complete that 1 year. Also some veteran licensure bills trying to streamline things for people that have retired or left military service that also had a license at that time. And we're also looking at ways to fix the Texas PHP funding. Again, as you'll remember, we've changed it. Did away with the $1,200 or $1,000 annual fee for the participants, and now there's a small fee that all licensees are paying. We're trying to get that changed to where all of those funds collected will be available to the program throughout the year instead of it being restricted to a certain amount by the legislature. Does anyone have any questions on 1998 or the legislative session? Okay, not seeing any. I left one thing for the end. Unfortunately, we did have a death in our TMB family this week. Miss Rokisha Lenore unexpectedly passed away on Monday morning. She was obviously a valued member of our registration department. It's always difficult to lose someone, but especially during this time of year, so close to the holidays. We are going to be granting leave for any of our staff that want to attend her services once the details are known. At this time, we don't have a cause of death or when the memorial services may be, but we will grant time for staff to go and do that. She began her employment with the agency in our call center back in October of 2021. And in June of 2023, she was promoted to a position as a licensure and permit specialist 3 in our registration department. And so I did want to make the board aware of that for the loss that we've had in our TMB family. So anyway, it's a difficult time for all of us here.
Thank you, Brett, and certainly our condolences to the family and to our TMB family as a whole. In especially as you said, in this time of the year, it's any time of the year would be difficult, but especially around these time of the years, it's certainly a little bit more impactful. All right, with that, we're going to go to Dr. Brett with the medical director report.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So just to let you know that our process changes within enforcement have alleviated a number of pressures we had on our expert panelists. DPRC did tentatively prove 10 new applicants in a variety of specialties. We do still have some specialties in which we could use additional suggestions. You'll hear the same names over and over again. Because we've had these same needs over the past few meetings. Diagnostic radiology, we do need. Oncology has been our consistent need over the last few years, finding additional oncologists. Dr. DeStefano did give us some suggestions there, and we're following up with those. Pediatric gastroenterology, we have a couple cases waiting additional experts in that subspecialty. And then a new one is we could use a few more otolaryngologists, ENT. So if you have any recommendations there, forward those names on to me. Myself or the expert panelist team can get with them and get them signed up. And I do want to thank you for all of the suggestions you've had in the past.
Thank you, Dr. Brett. So with that, we will go to Tori for the public information update.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. As already been mentioned today, we are already in the throes of the 89th legislative session. The legislature will convene on Tuesday, January 14th for 140 glorious days. During this time, thousands of bills are going to be filed, with hundreds potentially impacting TMB operations or licensees or employees. Bill filing actually began shortly after the November election, and on the very first day, over 1,400 bills were filed. As of this week, it was a little over 2,000 that had been filed, and of those, I am currently tracking over 160 that could have a potential impact on the TMB. For a little bit of context, last session, over 8,200 bills were filed, so we definitely have a lot of legislation still to come. Mr. Carlton already hit on the bills that we're kind of tracking that are of direct interest to the boards, and I don't have anything else to add on that right now, but of course, we'll continue to keep you guys updated as session moves along, and we'll certainly have a more robust update for you come the March meeting. Beyond the board-related bills, just so everybody's generally aware, popular topics kind of include election and voting, property taxes, border immigration, reproductive rights, firearms, and public education and school finance. So kind of the usual suspects, if you will. One other thing I wanted to mention at the last board meeting, I talked about how we had just started the kickoff process for the website revamp. That is fully underway. We are actively having lots of meetings with the vendor, and that seems to be going really well, and everyone's really excited about the direction that we're moving for the new public website that will hopefully be live, this time next year. And the final item I wanted to mention is that the next edition of the TMB Bulletin is going to be hitting inboxes in the coming weeks. The goal is to have it out before the end of the year. Aside from a year in review from Dr. Zafran, there's also going to be a special feature on the Texas PHP. If you were not aware, 2024 actually marks the 15-year anniversary of the creation of the PHP by the Texas legislature. So this is a great opportunity to highlight the program and remind our licensees of the excellent resource it can be to them or to their colleagues. I think that's all I have for you guys today, but I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Tori. And I know that you're going to a period of the year where you're going to be very busy monitoring a lot of activity across the street. So thank you. Ms. Crosby, I know you're here. Do you have any report from the physician assistant board?
No, thank you for allowing me to attend, and I always appreciate learning from the work that you guys do so that we can model certainly our mission as a board.
Thank you, Ms. Crosby, and thank you for all the work that you do also. Really appreciate it. All right, next item, I believe will be Mr. Freshour, consideration and possible action regarding pending litigation.
Yes. Good morning, board members, and you've already heard from me a little bit today, so I'm going to make this kind of short and sweet. We have the usual number of cases, pending at state district court on some appeals over some of your board orders after SOA cases. We will more likely than not prevail on all of them. We did recently have a case that was filed in federal court down in South Texas with claims against Susan Rodriguez and Miss Swanholm, myself, Dr. Zafran, over a licensure order that was dismissed this past week by the federal judge. Said there was absolutely, no cause of action there, so that was dismissed. We do have a couple of cases that are pending in federal court, and I think one going up to the Texas Supreme Court on substantial evidence appeals, but nothing to report on those at this particular point. We'll just keep you apprised of any developments that go forward. We did not too long ago, and I can't remember, I think it was right after the last board meeting, there was an appeal on a Dr. Lane that you had taken an order on for some violations. That went all the way up to the Texas Supreme Court, and there was an ask. The respondent was asking for a review by the Texas Supreme Court. We filed briefs outlining the issue, and the court then turned around and declined to take the case. So the ruling of the appeals court, which was in favor of the board, stands at this point. That's what I have today, Dr. Zafran. I'll be glad to address anything else if there are questions from you or your board.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And there's only one other thing that I would like to mention. I'm going to mention it very, very generically. We as a board, issues that come before, from the litigation side of things that the staff is undergoing, we're not really involved in that until it does come to us in front of us to be finally acted on. I think there's some misunderstanding that we are actively involved in SOA hearings that are ongoing, or in things that may be going on in district court, or things that may be going on in the Supreme Court. These, of course, are being managed by board staff, and as indicated today by our PFD, that even when something goes through SOA and a recommendation is made, we still sit here and we have a very thorough discussion, and we can go in many different directions as to how we adjudicate it. We obviously weren't sitting in SOA talking about what this licensee was going through, or what was appropriate or what was not appropriate. It was all about findings of fact and going through the process, and then ultimately coming to the board with findings from an administrative law judge. And with that, we sit here and we discuss whether to grant full licensure or whether to do something different. And that's the case with any type of case that goes to SOA. As far as things that go to district court, it really doesn't impact us unless they come back and say you need to do something differently. But we as individual board members don't go through anything with these proceedings until it comes to us as a full board. Scott, do you want to just maybe kind of help describe that? Because I just think there's a general misunderstanding of what we as board members do, at least until it comes in front of us with a final, provision that we can sit here and debate and talk about.
Yeah. And again, I think y'all have begun to see this, but Dr. Zafran, that was a really good summary. Yeah. Anytime, and I'm going to kind of go back to the basics, and I know I'm repeating, but you see it at ISC, and as an ISC panel, you're only making a recommendation. The individual physician, or if you're at licensure committee and there's a denial of licensure like you've seen already today, they still have a right to say, no, we don't like your decision there. We want to go to SOA and appeal it. What SOA does is they start from all over again. Board puts in all of our evidence, the respondent or the licensee applicant puts in all of their evidence, and the judges then make findings of fact and conclusions of law. But ultimately, it comes to you all to make the final decision on that, and you make that final decision within the parameters of our guidelines and what you can do, and based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law. Even then, as Dr. Zafran was saying, that decision can be appealed, but the key to that is that the board only makes the final decision when they're authorized to, and at the ISC level, you only make a recommendation. So then when you go past that, an individual or sometimes a pair of independent administrative law judges that have nothing to do with the medical board make the decision, but it comes back to you to finally decide what to do. But that decision has to be based on what's in the record. So when I do my report, and you hear me always say, well, y'all don't have to worry because we prevail on substantial evidence. What that is really saying is, and you as a board are excellent at doing this, is we're saying based on the facts in there, you had a very reasonable, factually supported basis to take your action. And the courts repeatedly, almost always, we've lost a few cases and everybody loses a few cases, have almost always said, yep, board, we see why you made your decision. It was fully supported. There were some things that militated against it, but you clearly were not acting in a manner that was arbitrary, was capricious. You didn't have a basis to do that. So again, you may see a lot of criticism about your decisions, but they're always solidly based, and the courts have recognized that. Now, the other thing you hear, and this can't be prevented, is, and y'all know this, is the legal system is not fast either. So when you go to SOA, it takes a long time. But that is not the fault of the board, and many times that is tried to be attributed to you all as a board, and it really isn't a function of that, and you just need to remember that perspective. Some things are within your control, some things are not. The ultimate decision is always within your control, but sometimes it takes quite a while to get to you to make that decision.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate
Yes,
that.
sir.
Sometimes it's important for us to kind of help remind ourselves and the public as to how this process works. And I think there is this perception that we are micromanaging cases as they go through the courts or as they go through processes. We are not. We are sitting here as we receive the final determination by the court at the appropriate time and how to act on it. All right, with that, the rest until we get to the next order of actions are reports. Unless somebody wants to extract one of these reports, I'll just highlight what they are on the agenda. And if you want to discuss something on these reports, just let me know. Number 20, report on temporary suspension hearings. Number 21, report on suspensions by operation of law. Number 22, report on motions for hearing requests. There's none there. 23, report on cease and desist orders approved by the executive director. Number 24, report on automatic orders. Number 25, report of cancellations regarding investigations. Number 26, consideration and approval of orders to show cause. There's none there. And number 27, consideration and approval of revised, vacated, and amended orders. There is none there. Now, I will go ahead and proceed on to our rules that are being proposed in front of us, and I will hand it off to Brent to help manage through that process.
Great, thank you, Dr. Zaffron. So agenda item number 28, there's none there because we're not proposing any additional rules. So we'll move on to the next set of agenda items. So board members, this item is to consider adoption of the revised rules that you approved for publication in October. As you recall, this was a complete reorganization and revision of the rules. And the goal was to eliminate unnecessary statutory language, simplify the rules, and to write them in plain, easy to understand language. We provided a link with a comment form on our website, along with a Dropbox for written comments from the public. We also asked other boards that we oversee for their comments. We received comments on a number of the rules. Specifically, we received comments from TMA, TSA, THA, Texana, TNP, and 2 other organizations advocating for low-dose ketamine rules. We also received comments from DISHES and EMS. We received comments from individuals. There were over 200 members of NPPAS that submitted the same basic form letter, which is not unusual when there's a large membership. They'll send about 200 of the same letter concerning advertising for board certification, and individuals who support low-dose ketamine treatment, including a number of veterans that are using it for PTSD, also provided comments, along with other miscellaneous comments on other rules. The comments generally focused on licensure, delegation, and office-based anesthesia. A significant number of these suggestions we did agree with and made changes to our proposed rules. They're non-substantive changes. They were things that helped with clarifying language and definitions. And there's also other comments that we do not think need to be added or could not be implemented at this time. One area where we are recommending to decline in the rules is for low-dose ketamine as of right now. However, we do recommend that this issue be taken up after the first of the year for further consideration. Additionally, staff anticipates that the legislative session will result in new laws that may impact or require new rules. So the version that has been presented to you and you're considering today shows where any changes were made from the initial rules that were approved for publication. If you had any comments or suggestions, you had that opportunity to submit them to us in advance, or we can talk about them today. What we're going to ask is if there's anyone that is attending the meeting from the public that has any comments, you can make those now. So you need to identify yourself, you kind of raise your hand, and we'll limit your comments to 3 minutes. If there are multiple people that are wanting to speak on the same rule, you can identify yourself. You can say, that you agree with or disagree with the previous speaker, and kind of try to comment by exception if the comments you're going to make are substantially similar to what the person before you already said. And also any comments that we get in writing, we have also have a collection of those. So at the end of all of this, overall, what the staff is looking for right now is recommending a motion to adopt the revised rules as presented to you, including all the non-substantive changes, and to further repeal all of our existing board rules and replace them with these revised rules. So that's where we are right now, and we'll start listening to the comments and see if we need to make any changes from there. But before we start taking comments from the public, are there any questions from the board members?
Just to reiterate, when I opened my remarks at the beginning, a lot of these were not condensing, but reorganizing the rules in a way to make it make more sense, reordering it, making sure that it was referring to the appropriate statutes, and clarifying how it looked, just to make it a lot easier for folks to be able to manage and see. So a lot of these are not necessarily changes, but more of a reorganizing and restructuring, as we are required to do in the sunsetting of these rules, and making sure that they are relevant and make sense. So just wanted to kind of reiterate that, even though I mentioned that in my initial board report.
And this has been, as we've said many times, a multi-year process that the general counsel staff has been heading this up, obviously in consultation with each of our departments and you guys and the public now, with the public comment period that's been going for longer than 30 days. We recognize that these rules, as written today and as proposed, they may not be perfect. They may still need additional revisions made to them. But since we are looking at a wholesale repeal of all of our existing rules and adopting all of these rules that are kind of been reorganized and shortened, it would make it difficult to try to piecemeal this and say, well, we're going to adopt these rules, but not these other rules. It would make it difficult based on how the renumbering and everything has been proposed. So we do have a hand up. It's hard for me to see all the way over there. I believe that is going to be Kevin Stewart. So you just go ahead and state your name and who you're with, even though we do know, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yeah, hey, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I'm Kevin Stewart. I'm here representing the Texas Nurse Practitioners and the Texas Association of Nurse Anesthetists. Just real quickly here, I think just generally, we're sort of shocked by how quickly this all went through. I know you said it was a 2-year process. I don't know why within that 2-year process, y'all never thought to sort of do a stakeholder meeting or have a public hearing. We also kind of feel misled about how this all happened. So in the proposal, it clearly said, and I quote, "A public hearing will be held at a later date." During the comment submission period on y'all's portal, y'all had a way to submit basically dates and times where a stakeholder meeting would be would be appropriate. So we filled that out. And honestly, I've been, kind of watching the medical board for about a decade now. I've never seen such substantive rules, such a large amount of rules go through without any stakeholder meeting. Y'all regularly do the stakeholder meetings. So I think we just kind of felt misled about there potentially being more discussion on these. Additionally, we're kind of, again, shocked that none of these rules went through the Regulatory Compliance Division. So the Regulatory Compliance Division, for those who don't know, is a division within the governor's office that is set up to analyze rules that could affect market competition. So any rule that would create a barrier to market participation or result in higher prices should be sent to the Regulatory Compliance Division. To my knowledge, not a single one of the medical board rules were sent to that division. I don't know if the board's position is that it feels like none of its rules impact market competition. I think that is a pretty hard sell. And I know I'm running out of time here. I think, doing the math, these rules were proposed on September 27th. The APA requires adoption within 6 months. So y'all could easily just forgo adoption now and adopt at your March 22nd meeting. That would give you all a full quarter to have the appropriate stakeholder meetings to sort of figure out the issues with the rules, improve them, that kind of thing. And you wouldn't have to propose the existing rules again, because that 6-month time period wouldn't have expired. If y'all have any questions about specific rules, we can jump into those if y'all want. Otherwise, we did submit sort of written comments on all those. So thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Anyone else have any comments they'd like to make, or does anyone have any questions for Mr. Stewart? Okay, anyone else online that's joined the meeting that wants to make public comments? Give it a few more seconds. Don't usually have anyone that just joins by phone only, but just in case there is somebody, I believe it's *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, not hearing any. Mr. Freshour, you and your team, again, having led this endeavor for an extended period of time. So we appreciate that, all the hard work that's gone into it. As far as what we're asking for is we would need a motion unless the board has any additional comments or questions on the rules as presented to you with the non-substantive changes that we made based on comments received. The motion would be to adopt the rules as presented today with the non-substantive changes, along with a repeal of all of our existing rules.
Thank you, Mr. Carlton.
Yep,
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposed rule changes as stated by Mr. Carlton.
And with the revocation of the existing rules, is that correct? Dr. Bhatia?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, it's Kokonos.
Seconded by Mr. Kokonos. Is there any further discussion? With that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, the motion passes.
Okay.
All right. And again, Mr. Freshour, thank you and your entire team. I know that this was a multi-year effort. This didn't start in September. It started way, way earlier than that. So again, thank you for all the hard work that you guys have done. And, again, there's going to be some additional conversation discussion if we want to get into specific parts of these. But as a wholesale effort, this kind of gets us to a place where we needed to get to make sure that things were clearer and easier to understand and all in one place. Before I go to the public comment, is the consent agenda items are ready also?
one thing, Dr. Zafran, I think just for formalities, and Ms. Yarbrough, I know you're here. I think if we go back to Mr. Carlton, the very last agenda item before consent was we have to adopt the rule review, and then what that does, Dr. Zafran, is that puts our existing rules saying there's still necessity for them, but we're going to turn around and revoke them, or not revoke them, repeal them. I think we have to adopt the rule review as well under, I think it might be item number 31, Mr. Carlton, or 32. Yeah, 34.
34 is discussion, recommendation, possible action regarding rule review to 22 TAC Part 9, Texas Medical Board.
And we just need a motion to adopt the rule review as published.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the review as
22
adopted.
TAC Part 9, right?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Corey, is there a second?
And I seconded Dr. Farmer.
Okay, seconded by Dr. Farmer. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, that is adopted. All right. Yeah, let me just go to the consent agenda before I go to the public comment section. I'm presuming that we have everything ready there? Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
All right, so is there a motion on the consent agenda? Items number 1 and item number 2.
Move to approve this consent agenda. Items 1 and 2.
All right, so that's consideration approval of the October 18th, 2024 medical board meeting minutes and action items and the committee reports, and the consideration of approval of minutes and action items of committees meeting during the board meeting. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. Is there any?
We'll have one for sure. I think it was Ms. Barnes, and then we'll say Dr. Vanderwood.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, that motion passes. Is there any issues around personnel matters?
I don't think if officially, we'll go to the public comment and we'll double check. But
Okay. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and open the forum for public comment, and I'm going to hand this back to Mr. Carlton.
Okay. Almost here at the very end of our 2-day board meeting. This is the time where the public, if there's anyone that would like to make any comments to the board, we just had a public comment period about the rules, but if there is someone that missed it somehow or would still like to comment, this is your opportunity to say anything you would like to the board. This could be suggestions for things to do in the future, items to take under consideration, and the board can bring that up if they so choose at a future board meeting and have it on the agenda. If you have an item on the agenda or an item you want to bring up for discussion or comment that is not on the agenda, that will limit how much the board can interact in a dialogue back and forth. So if there is anyone from the public, now's your opportunity, and you will be limited to 3 minutes. Not seeing any hands. Give it another minute, or sorry, another few seconds, I should say. Okay, I think that will conclude public comment.
All right, so before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just wanted to make sure that we wished everybody a happy holiday. Please be careful out there. This is not just our board members, but our staff and members of the public out there also. This is always a time when we, cherish spending time with family, but also where we think about our loved ones. We've already, had a situation where we've had a death in the TMB family. We certainly think about that person and their family members, as well as the extended medical board family, and going through a difficult time like that, especially during the holidays, when it is a time for us to get together to reflect on the past year, to reflect on the coming year. There's a lot that's going to be going on this coming year. It's going to be very active. It's going to be exciting, as much as I can use that term loosely, but always an opportunity to improve on things, I just wanted to make sure that all of you knew that I value and I cherish the friendship that we have as a board, the conversations we have, the cordiality, and taking our charge seriously of making sure that we're protecting the public as well as licensing individuals. Today, we saw how we had somebody who had trouble and difficulty going through residency and also needing to take care of herself. And I think it's commendable that you as a board thought of how to help remediate that, which again, it's not about just the discipline side of things. It's also about making sure that we are protecting the public, but also helping create pathways for our licensees, for individuals to do what they do best and what they love best, which is to help take care of patients. So once again, thank you. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move Nayak to adjourn.
Second, Vanderwaan.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or any opposition? With that, happy holidays. Take care and see you guys.
Still got to vote.
Well,
Happy holidays.
all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, we are adjourned, and I look forward to seeing everybody in person in March.
At
Blessings.
11:02
Merry
a.m.
Christmas.
Merry
Merry Christmas.
Take care.
Happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa.
Bye-bye. Happy holidays.
Bye bye. Happy holidays.
God bless and happy holidays.